Good morning, welcome to Bitcoin 2020. I'm Greg Zellers. It's October 26, 2017. 3 years before 2020, right? 3 years before 2020. So today we're going to talk about, this is the third in the first series of a series of videos. First one was currencies. Well, Bitcoin, gold, silver currencies, but it focused on currencies. Second one was Bitcoin, gold, silver, fiat currencies, and it focused on gold and silver. Today, we may talk a little bit about gold and silver, but probably we're going to stay focused and be focused on Bitcoin. And in reality, that's the reason for these videos. It's to the prior two videos, or the main two, the Bitcoin, gold, silver, and fiat currency group. The reason for that group is to lay, thus far, has been to lay the foundation for today's video. Why does Greg like Bitcoin? Greg loves gold and silver. He hates fiat currency. Why does he love Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin? Okay, in my own words, Bitcoin, I think this requires a little story. So my dad turned 90 years old in September of this year. I'm going to say about a year and a half ago, and this is the way I remember it, and maybe it's just what I've conjured up in my mind, but the way I remember it is I was at my dad's house and he was telling me about some of his stocks and stock portfolio. And he said, "Have you ever heard of Bitcoin?" I said, "Yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin, but you don't have anything to do with it because you can't reach out and touch it. You can't grab it. You can't put it under the bed. You can't put it in a hole in the ground. You can't put it in your safe. You can't put it in a lockbox. You can't feel it. I'm a touchy-feely kind of person. And you can't do that." And I said, it's digital, and that's about all I know about it. It's kind of a geeky thing. So in my silver journey, if you will, I'm at the time, now let's fast forward from that point to approximately December of 2016. And so in this quest to find out when silver might make its move and how quick I need to be looking at silver and how important it needs to be and trying to figure out when it's gonna jump up in price and why the government's doing this and why the government, and I'm looking at the news every day and watching the price of silver and seeing if silver reacts to the news. And I was just living and breathing this silver stuff. And so I'm on YouTube and I'm trying to find out where experts' price predictions would be taking silver. And I accidentally ran onto this price prediction for Bitcoin. And it said $1 million. And it's like, that guy's got to be out of his mind. So I clicked on to see how credible he was. I don't even remember who it was now, but it was pretty credible. And so I started investigating Bitcoin, and I thought, it's only like $200 or $300, and it had recently gone from about 500 to 980, and at that, on the first day that I started looking, it was $980. And so we met with our kids that all live out west, our 5 children and our grandchildren, well, except for our youngest who lives in this town. And they're bright kids. They're all bright kids. My boys are bright, my girls are bright, and the girls have married bright guys. And so I got to asking them about Bitcoin. What do you know about Bitcoin? Well, nobody knew anything about Bitcoin. And, I knew nothing, and I knew more than them. And so that was January. So I finally found a Bitcoin. I finally found a nice Bitcoin site, wink, wink, and started watching the price. And in just a short amount of time, it was $1,120. So I've been watching this price and following this price for ever since roughly February. And today it's just under $6,000. Now last week, a week ago, roughly today, it made a jump up to 6150, if I recall. So what we've seen it do, and you go look at the charts anywhere you can go to the internet and look for Bitcoin price charts, and you'll find many. And so what we saw was, in fact, there's a guy, I'd like to reference him right now. His name is Cliff High, H-I-G-H. And Cliff was a programmer for one of the large, Microsoft, I think. And back in the 80s, he developed a web crawler that he really designed to monitor thoughts and opinions that were posted on the internet back in like the late 70s, early 80s. I know that sounds weird. I didn't even know the internet existed at that point. But anyway, sometime in the 80s, we'll say. So this web crawler would monitor what people were saying, what columnists were saying, and people were, because we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have social media, we didn't have any of that stuff. But he wanted to monitor that stuff to get a leg up or a quick view, an advantage on like the stock market and other investments. So that was his whole motive. Well, it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew, and now today he monitors the World Wide Web completely, and he monitors things like Twitter and Facebook and social media also. And so I won't go into all of his stuff, and I'm not trying to say that I'm an expert, but Cliff likes to predict, or has a tendency to predict, a lot of stuff, much of which is correct. And it's based on what people are thinking and what people are saying on the internet about these topics. So one of them is Bitcoin. So back in February or January, Cliff High said, or I found that Cliff High had said that Bitcoin was going to $1,800 a piece. And so I carefully watched that. And he said it would happen in, like by, I want to say April. And just within a week or two of when he said it would happen, it happened, $1,800. And so right now, Cliff High's predictions, based on all that stuff, is that by roughly the end of the first quarter, by the second quarter of 2018, Bitcoin will be $13,880. Now, Greg Zeller's prediction is that by the end of December, Bitcoin will be $10,000. And it's just under 6,000 right now. At any rate, back to these charts that you can go look at. But what happened with Bitcoin in 1,800 and then $2,000 and then 2,400. But it's very much up and down, almost like Cliff calls it shark's teeth. It would be similar to a mountain range. By the way, the name of Cliff's website is HALF past PAST human.com, halfpasthuman.com. Interesting, very interesting. So yeah, this price has been up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, but it's been obviously outperforming anything you can imagine since February or since December to now. Last December to now is like $980 to $6,000. Holy smokes. You see anything else performing like that? So that's why I say I believe that it's possible, not because necessarily its past performance, but because what I believe it's going to do in the future. And I'm going to give you some information about where I believe it's going and why I believe it's going there. But that's why I say I believe we have the opportunity to buy dollars, that I hate, obviously, but dollars, we got to have them, 3 years out at a huge discount now by using Bitcoin. That is why I'm excited about Bitcoin. Okay, where is it going? Where do we think it's going and why? Oh yeah, I got too excited. What is Bitcoin, Greg? Okay, what is Bitcoin? This is from a guy on the internet. I don't even know his name. Oh, crap. But he is at mybtcjourney.com. Now, his opening statement I'm not even going to read because I disagree with it. But he says, what is Bitcoin? Oh, I will. I don't want to take the time. But when you pull out, say, a $100 bill, and I'm going to jump into part of what he's saying here, with a picture of Benjamin Franklin on it, the U.S. government says that you hold a piece of paper that is worth $100. He actually says a certain amount of gold, which is not true. They're not saying it's worth $100 worth of gold. They're saying it's worth $100. And we're the U.S. government, and our reputation is good, so it's worth $100. And since everything historically has been traded in U.S. dollars, and oil has historically been traded in U.S. dollars, then it's worth $100. The government guarantees you a certain amount of value for that piece of paper. I agree with that. In cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin, and there's now right at 1,000 different cryptocurrencies. I call them cryptos. But there's in market cap, and I'll try to get to that in a minute, but in market cap, Bitcoin is number 1, Ethereum is number 2, Litecoin is number 3, Bitcoin Cash is number 4. And then the rest of the 996 cryptos fall somewhere behind that. So, in cryptocurrency, there's no such concept. No government backs the currency. There's no precious metal that guarantees its value. The only thing that makes cryptos valuable is the people. And supply and demand. And that is one of the things that made me so excited from the beginning about it, because unlike our currency, we don't even know how many dollars has been printed. There has been so much overprinting, inflationary policy, that we don't even know how many dollars are actually out there. When I say printed, I mean digitally created also. And so with Bitcoin, there will never be more than 21 million. 21 million. Well, okay, when is that? Why, I think it's 140 years from now. And perhaps we'll get to that. But right now there's a little over 16 million. So 16 million in a world of 7 billion people. So last time I looked in Chicago, I'm thinking it's like 6 million people in Chicago. So 6 million. So, I wonder what, I've never been to New York City, but I would think that the New York City metro area probably has that many people. And so if all those people had one Bitcoin, none of the rest of us could ever buy one. So that's how limited worldwide the supply is. Okay, in this guy's view, he's saying cryptos and Bitcoin included have value because people say it has value, because it has demand. And if someday the demand falls off, and which is true, that's why we see that fluctuation in price. So when something happens and the demand on that limited supply goes up, the price goes up. When the demand backs off, the price goes down. If the demand were to back completely off, and everybody be happy with their fiat currencies, then there's an excellent chance that Bitcoin would go down in value. But the way things are going, no one's going to be happy with their fiat currencies. In fact, people are leaving their fiat currency in droves and going to hard currencies like gold and silver and Bitcoin. So one of the things he mentioned, he says, in fact, over time, as math problems, let's see, if someday the entire world says cryptocurrency is now worthless, we are no longer interested. That currency would not have any value anymore. Fortunately, that day will probably never come. In fact, over time, as the math problems and coding behind Bitcoin gets stronger, more secure, and more difficult to do, more widely, and Bitcoin becomes more scalable and widely accepted, Bitcoin and other altcoins will only continue to increase in value. And let's talk about that for a second. So Bitcoin was created by a person or a group of people, and I hope I don't mess up this name. They went under a pseudonym or a fake name called Satoshi Nakamoto. Satoshi Nakamoto. So they created this blockchain technology, he or they, and it lives on the internet. And to me, it's like this living, breathing thing. And built into this blockchain, or what powers this blockchain is this math algorithm. And in that algorithm is some of the basic principles and basic rules of Bitcoin that makes Bitcoin work. And one of them is every time we do a transaction, say I buy something, if I were to buy something from someone in China, Japan, or the next town over, that transaction has to be verified. I believe it's 3 times. And it's verified by a volunteer group, if you will, but they're paid for their time. Since Bitcoin is not paid or managed and controlled by a government, a company, or some group of people in a high-rise building somewhere, it has the ledger work has to be done by someone, or it's not secure. And so the math is done 3 times. The verifications are done 3 times. And it's not as simple as, well, Greg sent $10 to Joe Blow in some place. It is that plus this huge math problem. And it's designed into the system this way. So in the beginning, the math problems were not as hard, and you got paid a larger portion of a Bitcoin to do the verification, if you do it correctly. And then there's this halving, and I don't understand that well, but this halving goes on where you get half as much for doing that. And over the years, this has become known as Bitcoin mining. When you mining, like mining gold. Bitcoin is compared to gold, and this is mining Bitcoin. So when they do the verifications, it takes a lot of computing power, and so they get paid for it. And that's where new Bitcoin are created. So as built into this algorithm, into this algorithm, is how much they get paid when they get paid less for more work. So so it's almost like the supply, demand, and cost is built into it. That the cost will purposely and intentionally go up to build value in the currency. So, and I could be mistaken about this, but I believe also in 2020 there will be another halving, which means that it will take twice as much power, computing power, electricity, and time, energy, blah blah blah, to create a full Bitcoin. Again, it's to be earned in small segments by verifications. And that's where the new Bitcoin come from. And so people earn them and they sell them, and that's where the new ones come from. Other than people who own them are selling them and swapping and trading and buying what they believe is a lower point than what they think it will be, and then bailing out since it's so volatile, bailing out at the top, watching it drop, and then buying again, and up and down, up and down, up and down. Which I wish I were bright enough to do. I just don't have the time, energy, or right now technical skills to do that. I think we want to show you what a mining facility looks like. So these computers that do the verification don't have a screen and they don't have a keyboard. Typically, I mean, the technicians can plug into them and go in and look at the programs and all, but typically what they are is an open box frame about the size of the tower of an old-fashioned desktop PC that sits on the floor. But it has no sides on it because they get pretty warm. They create a lot of heat. And they typically nowadays have 3 graphic cards hanging in them and a power supply and a, whatever you call it, PCU or whatever it's called, the brain part that connects it all together. And so in this case, this is a mining facility where they have millions of dollars worth of computers stacked up. So, gosh, that's really not a very good picture, is it? But there might be as many as 10 on each row between that column and that column. And so what they do is they'll build these large warehouses full of these running computers, literally thousands per building, and they'll build these facilities close to the cheapest electric power source that they can find, because electricity, it consumes a lot of electricity to mine Bitcoin, to run that much math. And so they're building them in Iceland, because Iceland gets their electricity from thermal resources like volcanic steam. And then, like, I want to say McAfee built his facility, I think in the state of Washington, near a hydroelectric plant, so that he could buy the cheapest electricity he could in the United States. So this guy doesn't go into as much detail as I thought he would. He does, however, say, and it says it was posted a few months ago, doesn't give the date. He says, in fact, some economists are predicting Bitcoin value will go up as high as $6,000 by 2018. So, in reality, we hit $4,000 like a month ago, maybe. Maybe that's a good time. No, we want to talk about what Bitcoin is. So it lives on the internet. It's a living, breathing thing, in my opinion, the way I view it. And it holds all of the rules of the Bitcoin game for Bitcoin. Now, when there are other altcoins, no matter where they come from, they are different, but Bitcoin holds its rules in the algorithm. So it really lives off of supply and demand, or its value comes from supply and demand, and the supply is ever decreasing, and the demand is just beginning. Statistically, the experts say that 1% of the population has even heard of Bitcoin. Now, I don't know if that's true in the United States, but truly, and this is changing a lot because it's getting more news. But I want to tell you, in January of this year, when I asked the people that I considered bright people, asked everybody I knew, and nobody knew anything about it. And so, yeah, the price has gone up. So, which brings us to this, I think. I think this is really cool. So, Bitcoin went from $0 to $1,000. It took 1,789 days to do that. From $1,000 to $2,000 took 1,271 days. From 2,000 to 3,000 took 23 days. From 3,000 to 4,000 took 62 days. And I actually have the figure for the next jump. And from 4,000 to 5,000, it's not on that chart, but it took 61 days. And 5,000 to 6,000 was like 30 days. So what's happening, and exponentially, it's growing. As more people hear about it and hear about the price going up, they don't want to get left behind. And so the market cap keeps growing. And I hope I define this correctly. The market cap is the total number of available Bitcoin, so like right now, a little over 16 million, times the last purchase price. So that market cap will fluctuate with the price of Bitcoin. But when it hit $6,000, the market cap hit $100 billion. $100 billion. Now that's a lot of money, but they say that that's not a whole lot for any one market asset or one market or group. And so the growth potential in the market cap is huge. So yeah, I'm saying $10,000 by the end of December per Bitcoin. And I'm not the only one. Bitcoin is headed to $10,000. CNBC survey says. And so, yeah, it's really 16% of the 23,000 people who voted said Bitcoin will hit between $6,000 and $8,000, but it doesn't give a timetable. It's not saying when, but I can tell you when. So earlier this month, so this is pretty recent, it hit $5,856 a couple of weeks ago, right? So yeah, CNBC, I don't trust them, I don't like them. They're full of the bull crap that's being pumped out for the people to hear. However, they even believe Bitcoin is headed to $10,000. There's another CNBC article. Former Wall Street giant turned billionaire. Private investor Mike Novogratz would not be surprised to see Bitcoin price hitting above $10,000 in early 2018. He is a retired Wall Street investor, noted cryptocurrency advocate who is starting a $500 million crypto hedge fund with $150 million of his own money. He was speaking to CNBC when he revealed he was an early investor in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a lot of other cryptocurrency. Here's one, Investopedia. Bitcoin price could cross $100,000 in 10 years. So, no, it's not what John McAfee said. No, it's not. Nor is it nearly as large. But what I'm doing is I'm building this case. If this person said this, and this person said this, and this person said this, right? I actually think this is the same information, just from a different news source. This is CNBC. And Bitcoin could hit $100,000 in 10 years, says the analyst who correctly called its $2,000 price. And so I've read this article before, and this guy, sometime way back, said Bitcoin would be $2,000 by a certain time, and $2,000 by a certain time. This one, I like when they say by this certain time. So Bitcoin price could exceed $100,000 by 2021. This comes from Harvard Academic. In the part one, we talked about how the currency has devalued in 1 year. We gave and I almost remember the numbers exact. We gave the example of $79,502 earned in 2016 would have to have grown to $80,500 roughly by 2017 in order for it to have the same buying power. Now, we just covered essentially December 2016, end of December, by the way, 2016, to October 26th, 2017, we went from $980 to $6,000 in Bitcoin with Bitcoin. Looking at my notes, Andy Hoffman is a huge investment advisor, but he's a huge gold bug. Probably gold and silver, but gold bug for sure. And this is his quote. Bitcoin is a superior monetary asset. Another person said, Bitcoin is creating the unimaginable. And it is. It's creating a shift in monetary belief, and it is. This blockchain technology exists with all of the cryptos. In 10 years, there may be 1,000, but these 1,000, most of them will be up in smoke and gone. There are an awful lot of them that were only created to create money. They are absolute and total scams. And they have, there's this one, and I had to laugh about it. When I was in Idaho, I had leased 100 million yards of sand and gravel from the state of Idaho. And there's a new crypto coin called Sandcoin, and it's out of Russia. And I went and looked at their website. They have 250 acres. I had, I think, 740 acres leased. But they have 240 acres outside of Moscow, and I believe each coin is tied to a cubic yard of sand. I don't expect anybody to make a lot of money off of that, and I really don't believe that that's a viable crypto. That's just my opinion. That's just me. So there's cryptos that are tied to gambling, and there's just all kinds. But this blockchain technology will overtake much of what happens in the financial world. It can completely eliminate the need, or as much need, for stock brokerage firms. It can speed up, like right now. Let me give you a great example. I have had to wire money at different times for different occasions. And the wiring cost, even for a couple $1,000, was like, I don't remember, but it was like 10 or 15 bucks maybe or something. And when you go to your bank, you got to go to the bank, you got to set up, you got You got to set up the transactions. Everybody has to have a routing number. That gives access, temporary access to your account. It just doesn't feel good, and it costs more money than it should. With Bitcoin, you can send $10, you can send $10 million from one place to another for a little bit of nothing. So what else is Bitcoin? Bitcoin, another way of saying it, is digital currency. So that sounds kind of scary, but I have digital currency right now. When I work for my living. My employer deposits my income into my bank for me digitally. Ones and zeros, or actually in the program it really is ones and zeros. So they deposit the money in the bank. I've got a rental that I'm making, still have a few payments on, and the bank takes it out. When I watch television, it's through Dish. It's digitally dropped on a certain day of the month. My car insurance, my house insurance, digitally dropped on a certain day of the month. Our life insurance is digitally dropped on a certain day of the month. My telephone bill is digitally dropped on a certain day of the month. My fingers never touch currency for those transactions, ever. My electric would be that way, but we live in such a small town that they're not set up to do that. When a lot of the things that we buy for our home, paper towels and toilet paper and all kinds of things, we buy generally off of Amazon and digitally. Paper money never touches our hands, and it comes to the door via UPS. We live in a digital world, and Bitcoin seems far out there to many people, and it did to me at first also. But the reality is we're already there, and the only difference is that it's being controlled right now. What we're using is being controlled by the banking system, which can't be trusted. And the Bitcoin is not controlled by a banking system. Well, Greg, someone has to control it. Well, the blockchain controls most of it. It was pre-built. The controls are built into the system by and large. However, there are a group of developers who mostly are miners who kind of monitor what's going on. And so decisions are made through consensus. But it's decentralized, and that's the big thing about it. It's decentralized. Now, many people believe that it is anonymous. And in my opinion, it's not. I've heard, you've probably heard of people using Bitcoin for all kinds of illegal activity and whatnot. So there is they call it the dark web, and I really don't know that much about it, but from what I'm told, you can get about anything you want on the dark web. And the transactions, a lot of the transactions go through Bitcoin. Now, there are other cryptocurrencies that are popping up that truly are anonymous. And so those people will probably use those other cryptos, and those other cryptos may or may not go up in value. We're not here to talk about those. We're here to talk about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is an open source blockchain. You can go on the internet and see every transaction that has taken place. I don't have the ability to tie it to people, but the transaction went from this wallet to that wallet. And they're digital wallets. They're readily available. They're free. And there are some really good ones, and there are some not as good ones. And then there are offline wallets that are a really souped up thumb drive. Okay, and they have security measures on them and things of that nature. And so you can actually pull your Bitcoin off the system and it still be kind of like pulling a rabbit out of a big cage and putting it in a little cage. So, but back to it being not anonymous. In my case, if I were doing this, I would probably have it all tied to my email account. So when people, they buy their Bitcoin, they have to set up an account. It has to be tied to an email account. And so, quite frankly, it can be tracked. You and I both know that it can be tracked. And you and I both know they are tracking us. Or you're delusional. So how can it be tracked? It can be tracked through your email account. If you were to do to an anonymous email account and you did everything from your home, then it can be tracked through your IP address. And if you did it from a public IP address through an anonymous account, and you started that way and you continued that way and blah, 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 and you never checked it from you never checked on any account from a fixed IP address, then theoretically you could make Bitcoin anonymous. But that's not for me, that's not the attraction. For me, the attraction is that there's a guy, and I don't know if I can tell this story exactly correct. He either spent 1 or 2 Bitcoin for a pizza when Bitcoin was $5 a piece or something. There is the story of a young man who just like 5 years ago or something, maybe less, either heard about Bitcoin when he was 12 years old, or he was given Bitcoin by some geeky uncle or something, and he was 12. He was given $100 worth of Bitcoin, right? And today the kid is a millionaire, and he's like 18 years old. So I was talking to a guy in Idaho that has 80 Bitcoin, and he bought them at like $200 a piece. But here's the thing: many people say, "Oh yeah, I wish I'd known about that, or I wish I'd got in at $200 or $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 or $2,500." Here's the thing: people are going to say in 3 years, they're going to say, "Man, I wish I'd have got in at $6,000," because the growth per Bitcoin will exceed what the growth has been. The future growth of Bitcoin will exceed what the growth has been heretofore. $6,000 now, $13,800 by the first or by the second quarter of 2018. That's over 6,000. That's $7,000 gain per Bitcoin. Yeah, but Greg, it's $6,000. I can't take that gamble. So yeah, the gains from here out will be larger per Bitcoin. But I don't have $6,000, Greg, to do something like that. Well, here's the important thing. Bitcoin is divisible into small segments down to 1/100th of a millionth. So I guess that's 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. So that tells us a couple things. One is that you can buy very small amounts. Depending on where you buy them, it can range from, well, it's usually a couple of dollars to buy a given amount of Bitcoin. So I've actually seen where it's possible to buy $2 worth of Bitcoin, and it costs nearly $2 to do the purchase in fees. Where on the other hand, it costs about $2 to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin from the most expensive exchange. And I'll probably put links below, right down there, so that you can see where to buy. I'm sure I'll only give you the easiest place to buy. The easiest place to buy is also probably the most expensive to buy. But it's something that the non-tech person can easily do. So, Bill Gates said of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies that the animal is out of the box, or something to that effect, compared to maybe Pandora's box. Anyway, it's out of the box, and he said there's no putting it back in. And it will drive much of what we do in the future, and it's gaining popularity and strength. For example, the Ethereum platform, which is another cryptocurrency, and I don't want to confuse things, but it's designed specifically for smart contracts, to use smart contracts, digital smart contracts. Bitcoin is designed to be mostly actually a store of value and to be a currency. Then Litecoin, in the founder's own words, and my internet has dropped out on me, so otherwise I would let you hear his own words. His name is Charlie Lee. And Charlie Lee said, yeah, I developed Litecoin to be a silver to Bitcoin's gold. In other words, people were comparing Bitcoin to gold, and I do too, and it is a store of value like gold, and it's a better store of value today, only today, or maybe just today, because it's so easy to move around, and that's why people in other countries like it so well, because they can move it from country to country easily. Not so important to an American, but really important to some other folks from other parts of the world. Japan, actually, even though they're a stable country, is right now the largest player in the Bitcoin market. South Korea is large. The United States is large. All of the European Union is large. So it's not just a U.S. thing by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, Charlie Lee developed Litecoin, and he developed it to be a silver to Bitcoin's gold, in likening it to the old days when you bought large things with gold coins and smaller things with silver coins. So Litecoin's trading, in fact, back when I started looking at stuff, it was $12, and it's now trading at about $60, $58 or $60. And it is a currency also. So there's a lot of different uses for these cryptos. But when they all shake out and some of them go up in smoke, there will be a few left, or some left. And probably, most likely, it will be Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin, because they are the top three in market cap right now. One of them will also be a multi-million-dollar entity, coin, or at least $1 million coin. Again, my internet is down, or I would show you the exact quote, but if you Google John McAfee, Twitter, $500,000 Bitcoin, you'll find where John McAfee made that statement, or he made that online bet to any and all takers. Then he came back and he said, yeah, and he does. He's a very bright guy. He might be a jerk, but he's a very bright guy, very well educated. And his education is in math, and he's got this super incredibly high math degree. And he said, my calculations show Bitcoin at 2.49, and he showed it to the dollar, $1 million in 3 years. I'm not going to hold my breath for 3 years to see if it goes to $2.4 million. I'll turn blue in about 10 minutes. Well, less than that, about 2 minutes. But very bright people in the world believe that Bitcoin is going to large dollars. So what will happen instead of you going to a site that gives you the price of Bitcoin, it will probably give you the price of, oh, I didn't tell you what they're called. So 1/1,000,000th of one Bitcoin is called a Satoshi. And so you'll probably see Bitcoin listed or Satoshi listed in cents or something like that instead of the price of a Bitcoin as Bitcoin grows in value. So there's nothing to hold Bitcoin back. When we talk about risk, you know, in one of the other videos, the first video, or the part 1 video, we talked about the risk of the U.S. currency. And we would have to include major currencies worldwide because they're in the very same boat. They've been printed, over created, and over leveraged was the word I was looking for. And so the one thing you can absolutely take to the bank is that your dollars or your currency will be worth less next week than it is this week. And it will certainly be worth less next year than it is this year. And we're headed toward a reset of some sort. They've been talking about it for years, openly talking about a reset. Look it up. Again, anything that I say, if you question, look it up. Don't say, oh, Dad's off the deep end, or oh, Greg's imagining things. Look it up. Prove me to be wrong. And learn for yourself. That's the most important thing. That's the whole reason for these videos, is to spark your brain and your interest so you'll take the time to look it up. Anyway, guarantee is that our money will be worth less. And when we talk about the risk to Bitcoin, the risk isn't whether or not Bitcoin will go up in value, to me. I mean, I'm sure that you can conjure up some scenario where Bitcoin would collapse completely for an extended period of time, like forever. But the people that do the mining or the verification of the transactions, right now it costs about $1,100 to create one Bitcoin. That's how much work, energy, electricity, and everything goes into it. The risk is government intervention. That's the risk to Bitcoin. That is the largest risk to Bitcoin. If Bill Gates is correct and the cat's out of the bag and you can't put it back in, then they'll have to manage the cat. If the cat's not out of the bag far enough, they'll try to stuff it back in perhaps someday. There's the risk. That's the risk. The upside potential, though, is huge. When you can buy, theoretically, if McAfee is right, at $500,000 or $2 million, if you could buy that much future money for $6,000, or a portion thereof for $6,000, or for a portion thereof for a portion of the gain, and there's a reasonable expectation that it will be there, then it's silly not to do it. Before we leave, I want to talk about these miners. So yeah, I showed the example of the large miners that have millions of dollars invested. It can also be as small as one guy with one stand that wide, that tall, with 3 graphic cards in it, mining Bitcoin. And and they say that it's profitable. That's something that I think we want to look into. There's the other things that can happen, that can be done with Bitcoin is, and it will be very volatile over the next at least 5 to 10 years. Up and down, 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 gradually moving upward. But this continual, my kids that are from Idaho, the Sawtooth Mountains, with this continual up and down, gradually moving upward, but lots of volatility. So there are a lot of people that trade currencies, the dollar, the yuan, the mark, the yen, Canadian dollars and whatnot, back and forth. And those currencies fluctuate very little over the period of a day, probably just cents, few cents. But they're constantly making these trades up and down. Moves up, they make a trade down, up, down, up and down. And they try to make gains off of those up and down moves between two currencies. Bitcoin will move hundreds of dollars in a day's time. Sometimes it'll move 12 or 15 or $50. Still, compared to cents, it's huge moves where people can make money on the ups and the downs as this graph of Bitcoin price moves up and down, gradually upward, and sometimes not so gradually upward. So a lot of people that were trading currencies, international currencies, are taking their software programs that help them do the trading and moving it over to these cryptocurrencies and absolutely killing it with it. I mean, they are knocking down the jack because again, the moves are so large. So there's opportunities with Bitcoin to get involved in those things and buy into a pool of traders, or a trading program, or a trading pool, if you will. You can also buy into mining pools and mining programs and mining groups. And that's things for us to look into as we move forward. I think that wraps up this video. Okay, who uses Bitcoin as a currency right now? Is it all just a bunch of geeks or a bunch of people that are betting on high prices? And I would pull it up on the internet and show it to you, but look it up. Again, I lost my internet connection. You can buy anything directly from the dealer. Walk into the dealership in Fort Myers, Florida, at the BMW dealer and buy a BMW with your Bitcoin. Many car dealerships use it. Subway uses Bitcoin. Amazon uses Bitcoin. JM Bullion, SD Bullion both use Bitcoin. Dish Network, the TV supplier, or the television broadcasting whatever supplier, Space TV, what do you call it? Cable TV from space, right? They accept Bitcoin as a payment method. There are many everyday companies that we use every day that accept Bitcoin. There are also companies, additionally, there are companies where you can place a certain amount of Bitcoin with their wallet, with their company, and they'll issue a debit card that automatically converts the Bitcoin into your currency as you swipe it and spend it via a Visa card. So if you had a lot of Bitcoin and you wanted to sell it and you wanted to spend it and you wanted to get set up that way, you could buy everything that you now buy with your debit or credit card, you could buy it with your Bitcoin conversion Visa debit card. So the ability to use Bitcoin is not only large, but it's growing all the time. Can you sell it? You can sell it on exchanges. There's or you could sell it to an individual. You could sell it to your brother, your sister, or your next door neighbor. As easy as you could sell a bicycle. Or you could sell it back to the exchange that you bought it from, or you could sell it on another exchange. It simply does not make sense to sell any Bitcoin with the projections that are out there. So my internet connection was reestablished. This is the Twitter. I Googled John McAfee, Twitter, Bitcoin, 500,000. And he says, this is July 17th of 2017. Bitcoin had a large drop because there was actually going to be, there was a split, or a new coin formed off of Bitcoin called Bitcoin Cash. And today it's worth a little over $300. And so everybody that held Bitcoin at that time got free Bitcoin Cash for whatever amount they held. Well, anyway, so everybody was freaking out over this split that was coming up, and so Bitcoin took a dive, and it dropped from like $2,800 or $3,000 down to $1,800. McAfee gets on Twitter and he says, Bitcoin bouncing back fast from its technical corrections. Bitcoin's low of $1,800 plus yesterday simply could not be maintained. In the long term, Bitcoin moves above $500,000 within 3 years. Bets? ? And then it opened up. A whole bunch of people said, yeah, I want to bet. So that's McAfee. So Bitcoin is digital. It's not regulated. It is not centrally controlled. It is, at least for now, out of the reach of the central banking system and governments. There are people in countries that don't have stable currencies that Bitcoin has become an absolute godsend to them and the stability of their economies. Even little economies within towns using Bitcoin gives them stability compared to the unstable currency that they've had in certain countries like in South Africa or in Africa and places like that. Bitcoin is not regulated. That is another, it's not a risk to Bitcoin, it's a risk to the Bitcoin people. People that like Bitcoin, that want Bitcoin, that buy Bitcoin. There's a certain amount of care that needs to be taken in buying Bitcoin, but if you use what I believe is the easiest, and you pay, again, it's probably the most expensive place to buy, but it's about $2, if I recall what I've read, for about $100 worth. So, but since it's not regulated, and since it's worldwide, you can do business with a person in anywhere in the world, the sleaziest place in the world, and you wouldn't know it. So there are a lot of scams out there. There are a lot of scams, and I have seen some of those scams. And I follow some people on YouTube that have been scammed pretty largely. But I don't think they're all scams. I think the opportunities, it's kind of like good and evil. They kind of move upward in relative to each other. And so there are a lot of scams, and there is a lot of opportunity in Bitcoin. And I know this video seems short compared to the other ones, but it's pretty straightforward, especially from my point of view. And that is, there's an opportunity to purchase future dollars at a deep, deep discount. Now, if there were a total economic collapse, an EMP hit, heaven knows what else, would I rather have Bitcoin, some image in my head of some coin floating around, and only have it digitally living on the internet, or would I rather have silver? Well, under those conditions, I'd rather have silver. But if I believe that this thing's going to be held together indefinitely, or for a period of time, the moves that Bitcoin will make are tremendous, tremendous. And some of the opportunities surrounding Bitcoin are very, very large. Which brings me to the next video, the 3-year plan. The 3-year plan. That's why the name of the channel is Bitcoin 2020. Everything that we've done heretofore on this channel has been leading up to this video and then the next video, the 3-year plan. Greg Zellers, signing out.